Hello everyone, and welcome to Counselor Feature Friday. I'm your host, Brian Urban. In these features, we hope to give you some simple tips, tidbits, and tricks to make your days easier and your patients happier. In today's Feature Friday, we're going to focus on utilizing questionnaires with the Counselor Insight feature. What that means is being able to review the answers that patients have already provided to you at the same time that you are going through the case history directly with the patient. Okay, so let's do this kind of step by step here. So we'll start off by saying that this patient has already completed their questionnaire. Typically what you do at this point is you'll bring open the PDF of that questionnaire. Right, so you can typically before the patient has been called back, you can review their answers. Okay, good chance to kind of look things over. You know, for example, here, if I wanted to look for noise exposure, and they mentioned fireworks, right? I might note that. If they talk about, we asked about ringing or buzzing, and they notice in both ears, you know, it sounds like a waterfall. These are things I'll just set in my mind that I'm going to ask about them, of course, as part of the case history, right? Like you would typically anyway, but this might make the process a bit more efficient if you start from a place of knowledge, of course, right? So let's go ahead and let's jump into a new visit for this patient. And then we'll go straight to the Counselor Insight tab. Now, a frequent question is, well, how about if all of the questionnaire information just auto-populated Counselor Insight? The questionnaire can be imported, all the results of the questionnaire, I should say, can be imported into the history. They also can be imported into chart notes. So there are certain scenarios, in particular when maybe you're doing a survey or something, where that makes a lot of sense. And it's really helpful to have it auto-populate. So that feature is absolutely there and can be done. That information wouldn't be imported into Counselor Insight because, as we know, with case histories, a patient may say, no, they didn't have any noise exposure. And then when we ask them, it turns out that they did. Right? So there are plenty of times when what the patient answers does not actually match your end result in the case history. So what you do is be able to use both simultaneously. So what we typically do is you would bring open, as I mentioned, the PDF for the questionnaire. You'd have that open in one tab, and then you can bounce back and forth. Right, so in this case, the patient's saying they don't hear better in one ear over the other. Point being is you can go through different questions, spot ones that are, you know, red flags that you want to talk with the patient a bit more, and start to complete your case history. So the patient had noted gradual bilateral loss. Let's just flip through here. Once again, they had said no to a lot of things. So we're in this. Now here the patient reported they first noted the problem in 2028. Probably a typo, right? We don't want that necessarily to auto-populate in the reports. This gives us an opportunity to start making those notes. So for example here, gradual decrease bilaterally, and maybe you say something like they meant to have, you know, 2018, right? And then you could add in notes there. Now, as you likely know with Insight, you don't have to have this written perfectly. You can get your basic note in place and then clean it up later on. So maybe you want to spell that out better later on, say like first notice in 2018. Point being, you can just get your notes down quickly. Okay, but as we review the questionnaire further, like I mentioned here, it's gradual. Medications, they noted aspirin, no particular concerns there, or unless they have concerns for tinnitus, then maybe there is. And so as you go through, maybe you're saying that no, there isn't any concerns for all fullness, right? But the patient did note tinnitus, right? And let's see, they said it remains constant, the hearing remains constant, and the ringing or buzzing is in both ears. So our follow-up question is the ringing and buzzing constant? Is it intermittent, right? And maybe some of that was teased out through the questionnaire. Maybe not, but you can determine it here. And once again, we're going through on the point of noise exposure. The patient had mentioned fireworks. Maybe as we question further, it turns out that she just goes to fireworks shows and she's, you know, a mile away from the fireworks, and there's no real concern there for necessary noise exposure. But it turns out that she also is a competitive clay shooter, right? So we want to go ahead and add that, right? As we know, case histories constantly are modified or consistently are modified on the fly. So the idea is to be able to reference the case history, or I'm sorry, the completed case history forms, and then use that information in real time to fill in Counselor Insight, right? So as you continue to add more information, not only does it build out your reports, but it also helps determine the appropriate coding, right? So this is all happening in real time. Once you're finished with the case history, you click Export to Reports. That will signal the transition between, okay, I'm now finished taking my case history, and now I want to start my testing. Of course, you can always modify this later on, but this just signifies that transition in the patient visit. So once again, we want you to be able to use the questionnaires and intake forms that the patient have completed online, use those very fluidly with the rest of the patient encounter, and to be able to modify on the fly based on what you're learning directly from that patient. Because once again, that's going to drive what language is in your report. It's going to drive what codes come up and are used then for claims, right? So we want this to be accurate and all be done in real time. So if you have any questions about this, please let us know. Give us a call, email us, live chat us. We are always happy to help. And thank you very much for joining us for Counselor Feature Friday. As always, have a wonderful, wonderful weekend and be well.